Śrīmad Śrīla Bhaktivedanta Narayan Goswami Maharaj Śrīla Gurudev ki jai. Nitila Pravishtam Vishnupad Rashata Rashata Śrīmad Śrīla Bhaktivedanta Vaman Goswami Maharaj ki jai. Nitila Pravishtam Vishnupad Rashata Rashata Śrīmad Śrīla Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj Śrīla Prabhupada ki jai. Nitila Pravishtam Mahabhagavat Śrīla Gokshara Swabaji Maharaj ki jai. Nitila Pravishta Śrīla Satchidananda Bhaktivinoda Thakur ki jai. Nitila Pravishta Vaishnav Sarvabhauma Śrīla Jagannatha Swabaji Maharaj ki jai. Shri Rupa Gauriya Guru Varga ki jai. Shri Rupa Sanatan Bhatta Raghunath Shri Jeev Gopal Patadash Raghunath Shara Gosai Prabhu ki jai. Shri Sarup Damodar Rai Ramanandari Shri Gaur Parshad Vrinda ki jai. Nam Acharya Śrīla Haridas Thakur ki jai. प्रेम से कहो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासरी गौर भक्त वृंद की जय। श्री क्षेत्र मंडल गौर मंडल ब्रज मंडल मथुरा वृंदावन धाम की जय। सर्व अभिष्ट प्रदत्त गिरिराज महाराज की जय। श्री राधा कुंड श्याम कुंड की जय। श्री यमुना देवी गंगा देवी की जय। श्री तुलसी महारानी वृंद देवी की जय। श्री भक्ति देवी की जय। श्री पूर्णमासी योग श्री गोपेश्वर महादेव की जय। श्री हेर पंचमी की जय। अनंत कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की जय। समागत गौर भक्त वृंद की जय। श्री निताय गौर प्रेमानंदे हरि हरि बोल। धन्यवाद प्रणाम गार्गराज जी, रूप मंजरी दीदी, इंदिरा माता जी एंड माधवी दीदी, धन्यवाद प्रणाम। ओम ज्ञानतिमिरन्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरुवे नमः। नमो ॐ विष्णुपदाय राधिकाय प्रियात्मने श्रीमद्भक्तिवेदान्त नारायणीति नामिने। नमो ॐ विष्णुपदाय कृष्णपृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्त स्वामिनिति नामिने। वंशकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपासिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। नमो महावदन्याय कृष्णप्रेमप्रदायते कृष्णाय कृष्णचैतन्य नाम्ने गौरतिशे नमः। गुरुवे गौरचन्द्राय राधिकाय तदालये कृष्णाय कृष्णभक्ताय तरभक्ताय नमो नमः। यं प्रव्रजन्तम् अनुपेतमपेतकृत्यं द्वैपायनो विरहकातर आजुहाव पुत्रेति तन्मयतया तरवोऽभिनेदुस्तं सर्वभूतहृदयं मुनिमानतोऽस्मि। नारायणं नमस्कृतं नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरयेत्। शृण्वतं स्वकथा कृष्ण पुण्यश्रवणकीर्तन हृदन्तस्तो ह्यभद्राणि विधुनोति सुहृत्सतम्। नष्टप्रयश्वभद्रेषु नित्यं भगवत्सेवया भगवत्युत्तमश्लोके भक्तिर्भवति नैष्टिकी। तवैवास्मि न जीवामि त्वया विना इति विज्ञाय राधे त्वां नायमां चरणन्तिकम्। Oops, sorry guys. Oh my god, I didn't. Should I redo this? I'll do it. Nashta Pareshvavadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavatuttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtaki. Tavaivasmi na jivami tvaya vina iti vigyaya radhe tvam nayamam charanantikam. Bhaktya vihina aparada lakshay क्षिप्ताष्टकामद्वितरङ्ग मध्ये कृपामयि त्वं शरणं प्रपन्ना वृन्दे नमस्ते चरणारविन्दम्। Bhaja Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Alright, so let's do a recap of the first 25 verses we read yesterday. One day, after finishing his morning duties, Maharaj Bharat sat down on the bank of river Gandaki and began chanting his mantra beginning with Omkar. A thirsty doe came there. While she was drinking water, she heard the frightful roar of a lion and became very afraid and suddenly leaped across the river, though she had not yet quenched her thirst. The doe was pregnant, and when she jumped out of fear, her baby fell from her womb into the flowing waters. Being separated from its flock and distressed by its miscarriage, the black doe fell down into a cave and died. The great King Bharat, seeing the small fawn floating down the river, felt great compassion and lifted it from the waves. Knowing it to be motherless, he brought it to his ashram. Note: our compassion should raise others from the material platform to the spiritual, otherwise it can spoil our spiritual advancement. Bharat's attachment to the deer. Bharat began to maintain, protect, and caress the deer as his own child. In this way, he gave up his rules and regulations, and gradually neglected to worship the Lord. After a few days, he forgot everything about his spiritual advancement. And then he began to think about the deer. It is helpless and alone, having lost its relatives by the force of time. It has taken my shelter with full faith and dependence. I should not be envious and neglect the deer, but selflessly raise, protect, gratify, and fondle it. Renounced persons who are cultured and saintly should renounced persons who are cultured and saintly should neglect their important interests to protect the surrendered. Note: Bharat forgot that it was impossible for him to elevate a deer, an animal, to spiritual consciousness. Due to attachment for deer, he lay down, walked about, bathed, and even ate with it. His heart became bound to the deer in affection. Fearing that ferocious animals might kill the deer, Bharat took it with him whenever he went to the forest to collect kush grass, flowers, wood, leaves, fruits, roots, and water. In the forests, he would carry the deer on his shoulders, sometimes keep it on his lap, or, when sleeping, on his chest. Thus he felt great bliss in petting it. While he was worshipping the Lord, he would at intervals get up and see where the deer was. Seeing it, he would be satisfied and bless it, saying, "My dear calf, may you be happy in all respects." Sometimes, not seeing the deer, his mind would be very agitated, like a miser who has lost his wealth. When the deer was gone, he would be filled with anxiety and would lament in separation. Thus he would become illusioned and speak as follows: "Like a cunning hunter, my mind is always filled with cheating propensities and cruelty. Perhaps this deer, having faith in me, will not consider my offense, and like a gentle person, turn out of its kindness. Shall I see it again? Alas, is it possible that I shall see this animal protected by the Lord? Shall I again see him wandering in the garden, eating soft grass? Perhaps the deer has been eaten by a wolf, or a pack of boars, or a tiger. Sunrise is the beginning of auspicious things, but it is not so for me. The sun is setting now, yet the poor animal who trusted me has not returned. When will this prince among deer return and drive away my grief by his pleasant personal activities? I certainly must have no pious assets, otherwise the deer would have returned by now. Seeing me feigning meditation with closed eyes, it would circumambulate me out of anger and love, and fearfully touch me with its soft horns, which felt like drops of water. When I chastised the deer by pushing it away for contaminating the sacrificial ingredients, it would immediately become fearful and sit down motionlessly, just like the son of a saintly person. Link. After speaking like a madman, Bharat goes outside and sees the footprints of the deer on the ground. The deer's footprints are small, beautiful, auspicious, and soft. They must indicate the superiority of the earth's austerities over mine. They must show the path to regain my lost wealth, and they must have made this land suitable for executing sacrifices. Seeing the dark marks on the rising moon that resembled a deer, he said, "Has the compassionate moon given the deer shelter, knowing that it has strayed from home and has become motherless, to protect it from the fearful attacks of a lion? The deer was like my submissive son, and now my heart, which is like the land lily, burns with the feverish flames of the forest fire of separation. Seeing me so distressed, the moon is certainly splashing its cool, shining nectar upon me like a friend." Note, according to Ayurveda, splashing gargled water on one who has a high fever. So interesting. Okay. So now we're going to read about how Bharat takes as a deer in next life. There. 26. Let me just see who else came. Oh man, is it working? Looks like my internet's tripping out. Anyhow, I'm going to look at the synonyms. That's easier actually to read. Evam agatamana manarata akula hridaya mrigadaraka abhasena swararabdha karmana yoga arambanata yoga vibramshita sayoga tapasa yoga bhagavat aradhana lakshanat chakatam itarata jati antare ena kunake asanga shakshat nishayasa pratipakshaya prak parityakta dustyaja hridaya abhijatasya tasya evam antaraya vihita yoga arambanasya yoga rajarishe bharatasya tavat mriga arbaka poshana palana prinana lalana anusangina aviganayata atmanam ahi iva akubilam duratikrama kala karala rabasa apadyata. Shukadev Goswami continued, "My dear king, in this way Bharat Maharaj was overwhelmed by an uncontrollable desire which was manifest in the form of the deer. Due to the fruitive results of his past deeds, he fell down from mystic yoga, austerity, and worship of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. If it were not due to his past fruitive activity, how could he have been attracted to the deer after giving up the association of his own son and family, considering them stumbling blocks on the path of spiritual life? How could he show such uncontrollable affection for a deer? This was definitely due to his past karma. The king was so engrossed in petting and maintaining the deer that he fell down from his spiritual activities. In due course of time, insurmountable death, which is compared to a venomous snake that enters the hole created by a mouse, it situated itself before him. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. As it will be seen in later verses, Bharat Maharaj at the time of death would be forced to accept the body of a deer due to his attraction for the deer. In this regard, a question may be raised. How can a devotee be affected by his past misconduct and vicious activities? In Brahma Samhita 554, it is said, Karmani nirdahati kintu cha bhakti bhajan. For those engaged in devotional service, bhakti bhajan, the results of past deeds are indemnified. I don't know that word. Indemnified. Indemnify means compensate someone for harm or loss. Okay. Or reimbursed, compensated, remunerated. Okay. According to this, Bharat Maharaj could not be punished for his past misdeeds. The conclusion must be that Maharaj Bharat purposely became over-addicted to the deer and neglected his spiritual advancement. To immediately rectify his mistake, for a short time he was awarded the body of a deer. This was just to increase his desire for mature devotional service. Although Bharat Maharaj was awarded the body of an animal, he did not forget what had previously happened to him due to his purposeful mistake. He was very anxious to get out of his deer body, and this indicates that his affection for devotional service was intensified, so much so that he was quickly to attain perfection in a Brahman body in the next life. It is with this conviction that we declare that in our book Back to Godhead magazine, that devotees like the Goswamis living in Vrindavan who purposely commit some sinful activity are born in the bodies of dogs, monkeys, and tortoises in that holy land. Thus they take on these lower forms for a short while, and after they give up those animal bodies, they are again promoted to the spiritual world. Such punishment is only for a short period, and it is not due to past karma. It may appear to be due to past karma, but it is offered to rectify the devotee and bring him to pure devotional service. Wow, that's very interesting. So, guess I better not mess with the dogs, monkeys, and tortoises in Vrindavan. Tadanim api parshvavartinam atmajam iva anushochatam abhivikshamana mrige eva abhiniveshitamana visrija lokam imam saha mrigena kalevaram mritam anunamrita janma anusmriti itaravat mrigas shariram avapa. At the time of death, the king saw that the deer was sitting by his side, exactly like his own son, and was lamenting his death. Actually, the mind of the king was absorbed in the body of the deer, and consequently, like those bereft of Krishna consciousness, he left the world. The deer. He left the world, the deer, and his material body and acquired the body of a deer. However, there was one advantage. Although he lost his human body and received the body of a deer, he did not forget the incidents of his past life. Purport. There was a difference between Bharat Maharaj's acquiring a deer body and others acquiring different bodies according to their mental condition at the time of death. After death, others forget everything that has happened in their past lives. But Bharat Maharaj did not forget. According to Bhagavad Gita, Yam Yam Vapi Smaram Bhavam Tyajante Kalevaram Tam Tam Evaiti Konteya Sadatar Bhava Bhavita. Whatever state of being one remembers when he quits his body, that state he will attain without fail. Bhagavad Gita 8:6. After quitting his body, a person gets another body according to his mental condition at the time of death. At death, a person always That semicolon should be an S. At death, a person always thinks of that subject matter in which he has been engrossed during his life. According to this law, because Bharat Maharaj was always thinking of the deer and forgetting his worship of the Supreme Lord, he acquired the body of a deer. However, due to his having been elevated to the topmost platform of devotional service, he did not forget the incidents of his past life. This special benediction saved him from further deterioration. Due to his past activities in devotional service, he became determined to finish his devotional service even in the body of a deer. It is therefore said in this verse, Mritam, although he had died, Anu, afterwards, Namrita Janmanu Smritir Itaravat. He did not forget the incidents of his past life as others forget them. And as stated in Brahma Samhita, Karmani Nirdahati Kintu Chabhakti Bhajam. Verse 54. It is proved herein that due to the grace of the Supreme Lord, a devotee is never vanquished. Due to his willful neglect of devotional service, a devotee may be punished for a short time, but he again revives his devotional service and returns home back to Godhead. Tatrapi hava atmano mrigatva karanam bhagavar aradhana samihanubhavena nismritya bhrisham anutapya mana aha. Although in the body of a deer, Bharat Maharaj, due to his rigid devotional service in his past life, could understand the cause of his birth in that body. Considering his past and present life, he constantly repented his activities, speaking in the following way. Purport. This is a special concession for a devotee. Even if he attains the body that is non-human, by the grace of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he advances further in devotional service, whether by remembering his past life or by natural causes. It is not easy for a common man to remember the activities of his past life, but Bharat Maharaj could remember his past activities due to his great sacrifices and engagement in devotional service. Aho kashtam brashta aham atmavatam anupatat yat vimukta samasta asangasya vivikta punya arana sharanasya atmavata Atmani Sarvesham Atmanam Bhagavati Vasudev Tat Anushravana Manana Kirtana Aradhana Anusmarana Abhiyogena Ashunya Sakala Yamena Kalena Samaveshitam Samahitam Kartsnena Mana Tattu Puna Mama Abudasya Arat Mrigasutam Anu Parisusrava. In the body of a deer, Bharat Maharaj began to lament. What misfortune! I have fallen from the path of the self-realized. I gave up my real sons, wife, and home to advance in spiritual life, and I took shelter in a solitary holy place in the forest. I became self-controlled and self-realized, and I engaged constantly in devotional service, hearing, thinking, chanting, worshipping, and remembering the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vasudeva. I was successful in my attempt, so much so that my mind was always absorbed in devotional service. However, due to my personal foolishness, my mind again became attached, this time to a deer. Now I have obtained the body of a deer and have fallen far from my devotional practices. Purport. Due to his stringent execution of devotional service, Maharaj Bharat could remember the activities of his past life and how he was raised to the spiritual platform. Due to his foolishness, he became attached to an insignificant deer and thus fell down and had to accept the body of a deer. This is significant for every devotee. If we misuse our position and think that we are fully engaged in devotional service and can do whatever we like, we have to suffer like Bharat Maharaj and be condemned to accept the type of body that impairs our devotional service. Only the human form is able to execute devotional service, but if we voluntarily give this up for sense gratification, we certainly have to be punished. This punishment is not exactly like that endured by an ordinary materialistic person, By the grace of the Supreme Lord, a devotee is punished in such a way that his eagerness to attain the lotus feet of Lord Vasudeva is increased. By his intense desire, he returns home in the next lifetime. Devotional service is very completely described here. Tad anushravana manana sankirtanaradhananusmaranabhiyogena. The constant hearing and chanting of the glories of the Lord is recommended in Bhagavad Gita. Sattam kirtayanto mam yatantaschadrida vrata. Those who have taken to Krishna consciousness should be very careful that not a single moment is wasted, and that not a single moment is spent without chanting and remembering the Supreme Personality of Godhead and His activities. By His own actions and by the actions of His devotees, Krishna teaches us how to become cautious in devotional service. Through the medium of Bharat Maharaj, Krishna teaches us that we must be careful in the discharge of devotional service. If we want to keep our minds completely fixed without deviation, we must engage them in devotional service full time. As far as the members of the International Society of Krishna Consciousness are concerned, they have sacrificed everything to push on this Krishna consciousness movement. Yet they must take a lesson from the life of Bharat Maharaj to be very cautious and to see that not a single moment is wasted in frivolous talk, sleep, or voracious eating. Eating is not prohibited, but if we eat voraciously, we shall certainly sleep more than required. Sense gratification ensues, and we may be degraded to a lower form. In that way, our spiritual progress may be checked, at least for the time being. The best course is to take the advice of Srila Rupa Goswami, avyartha kalatvam. We should see that every moment of our life is utilized for the rendering of devotional service and nothing else. This is the secure position for one wanting to return home back to Godhead. Iti evam nigura nirveda visrija mrigim mataram puna bhagavat kshetram upashamashila munigana daitam shalagramam pulastya pulaha ashramam kalanjarat pratyajagama. Although Bharat Maharaj received the body of a deer, by constant repentance he had become completely detached from all material things. He did not disclose these things to anyone, but he left his mother deer in a place known as Kalanjara mountain, where he was born. He again went to the forest of Shalagram and to the ashram of Pulastya and Pulaha. Purport. It is significant that Maharaj Bharat, by the grace of Vasudeva, remembered his past life. He did not waste a moment. He returns to Pulaha ashram, to the village known as Shalagram. Association is very meaningful. Therefore, ISKCON tries to perfect one who enters a society. The members of the society should always remember that the society is not like a free hotel. All the members should be very careful to execute their spiritual duties, so that whoever comes will automatically become a devotee and will be able to return back to Godhead in this very life. Although Bharat Maharaj acquired the body of a deer, he again left his hearth and home, in this case the mountain Kalanjara. No one should be captivated by his birthplace and family. One should take shelter of the association of devotees and cultivate Krishna consciousness. Tasminapi kalam pratikshamana sangacha brisham udvigna atma sahachara shushkaparna trina viruddha vartamana mrigatva nimitta avasanam eva ganayam mriga shariram tirtha udaka klinam utsasarja. Remaining in that ashram, the great king Bharat Maharaj was now very careful not to fall victim to bad association. Without disclosing his past to anyone, he remained in that ashram and ate dry leaves only. He was not exactly alone, for he had the association of the Supersoul. In this way, he waited for death in the body of a deer. Bathing in that holy place, he finally gave up that body. Purport. Holy places like Vrindavan, Haridwar, Prayag, and Jagannath Puri are especially meant for the execution of devotional service. Vrindavan specifically is the most exalted and preferred holy place for Vaishnava devotees of Lord Krishna who are aspiring to return back to Godhead, the Vaikuntha planets. There are many devotees in Vrindavan who regularly bathe in the Yamuna, and this cleanses all the contamination of the material world. By constantly chanting and hearing the holy names and pastimes of the Supreme Lord, one certainly becomes purified and becomes a fit candidate for liberation. However, if one purposely falls victim to sense gratification, he has to be punished, at least for one lifetime, like Bharat Maharaj. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purports of the 5th canto, 8th chapter of the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, entitled A Description of the Character of Bharat Maharaj. Chapter 9. Let me open this up in a new page, though. The Supreme Character of Jaḍa Bharata. Let me just check everything is running okay. I guess maybe Bharat Maharaj could in that form. Yeah. Okay. In this chapter, Bharat Maharaj's attainment of the body of a Brahman is described. In this body, he remains like one dull, deaf, and dumb. So much so that when he was brought before the goddess Kali to be killed as a sacrifice, he never protested, but remained silent. After having given up the body of a deer, he took birth in the womb of the youngest wife of a Brahmin. In this life, he could also remember the activities of his past life, and in order to avoid the influence of society, he remains like a deaf and dumb person. He was very careful not to fall down again. He did not mix with anyone who was not a devotee. This process should be adopted by every devotee. As advised by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Asat Sanga Tyaga E Vaishnava Achar. One should strictly avoid the company of non-devotees, even though they may be family members. When Bharat Maharaj was in the body of a Brahmin, the people in the neighborhood thought of him as a crazy, dull fellow. But within, he was always chanting and remembering Vasudeva, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Although his father wanted to give him an education and purify him as a Brahmin by offering the sacred thread, he remained in such a way that his father and mother could understand that he was crazy and not interested in the reformatory method. Nonetheless, he remained fully Krishna conscious, even without undergoing such official ceremonies. Due to his silence, some people who were no better than animals began to tease him in many ways. But he tolerated this. After the death of his father and mother, his stepmother and stepbrothers began to treat him very poorly. They would give him the most condemned food, but still he did not mind. He remained completely absorbed in Krishna consciousness. He was ordered by his stepbrothers and mother to guard a paddy field one night. And at that time, the leader of a dacoit party took him away and tried to kill him by offering him as a sacrifice before Bhadrakali. When the dacoits brought Bharat Maharaj before the goddess Kali and raised a chopper to kill him, the goddess Kali became immediately alarmed, and due to the mistreatment of a devotee, she came out of the deity and taking the chopper in her own hands, killed all the dacoits there. Thus, a pure devotee of the Supreme Personality of Godhead can remain silent despite the mistreatment of non-devotees. Rogues and dacoits who misbehave toward a devotee are punished at last by the arrangement of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. I'm going to stand up because I'm feeling a little bit sleepy right now. I went to sleep kind of late. One second. Oh, okay. There. Shri Shuka Uvacha. Oh man, these are such long prose things. Atak. Acha. I'm going to try singing it, like somebody suggested to me. So, Ata kasyachit dijavarasya angira pravarasya shamadama tapa svadhyaya adhyayana tyaga santosha titiksha prashraya vida anasuya atmagyana ananda yuktasa atmatsadrisha shrutashila achara rupa adarya guna Navasa Udarya Anga. Nah, I'm just going to say it. Angaja Babhuvu Mitunam Cha Yaviyasyam Bharyayam Yatu Tatra Pumantam Parama Bhagavatam Raja Rishi Pravaram Bharatam Utsrishta Mriga Shariram Charama Sharirena Vipratvam Brahmanagatam Ahu. Srila Shukadeva Goswami continued, My dear king, after giving up the body of a deer, Bharat Maharaj took birth in a very pure Brahman family. There was a Brahman who belongs to the dynasty of Angira. He was fully qualified with Brahminical qualifications. He could control his mind and senses, and he had studied the Vedic literatures and other subsidiary literatures. He was expert in giving charity, and he was always satisfied, tolerant, very gentle, learned, and non-envious. He was self-realized and engaged in the devotional service in the Lord. He remained always in trance. He had 9 equally qualified sons by his first wife, and by his second wife he begot twins, a brother and a sister, of which the male child is said to be the topmost devotee and foremost of saintly kings, Bharat Maharaj. This, then, is the story of the birth he took after giving up the body of a deer. Purport. Oh, really? It does sound better, huh? Okay, fine. I will sing it. Purport. Bharat Maharaj was a great devotee, but he did not attain success in one life. In Bhagavad Gita, it is said that a devotee who does not fulfill his devotional duties in one life is given the chance to be born in a fully qualified Brahmin family or in a rich Kshatriya or Vaishya family. Suchinam Shrimatam Gehe, Bhagavad Gita 641. Bharat Maharaj was the firstborn son of Maharaj Rishabha in a rich Kshatriya family. But due to his willful negligence of his spiritual duties and his excessive attachment to an insignificant deer, he was obliged to take birth as the son of a deer. However, due to his strong position as a devotee, he was gifted with remembrance of his past life. Being repentant, he remained in a solitary forest and always thought of Krishna. Then he was given the chance to take birth in a very good Brahmin family. Tatrapi svajana sangat chabrisham udvijamana Bhagavata karma bandha vidvangsana Shravana smarana guna vivarana Charana aravinda yugalam manasa Vidadhat atmana pratighatam Ashankamana Bhagavat anugrahena Anusmara sapurva janma avali Atmanam unmata jara anda Badira sarupena darshayatam ashalokasya. Feels weird doing that. Anyways. Due to his being especially gifted with the Lord's mercy, Bharat Maharaj could remember the incidents of his past life. Although he received the body of a Brahman, he was still very much afraid of his relatives and friends, who were not devotees. He was always very, very cautious of such association, because he feared that he would again fall down.
Consequently, he manifested himself before the public as a madman, dull, blind, and deaf, so that others would not try to talk to him. In this way, he saved himself from bad association. Within, he was always thinking of the lotus feet of the Lord and chanting the Lord's glories, which save one from the bondage of fruit of action. In this way, he saved himself from the onslaught of non-devotee associates. Purport. Every living entity is bound by different activities due to association with the modes of nature. As stated in Bhagavad Gita, Karanam guna sangosya sad asad yoni janmasu. This is due to his association with that material nature. Thus he meets with good and evil along various species. We get different types of bodies among 8,400,000 species according to our karma. Karmana daiva netrena. We work under the influence of material nature contaminated by the three modes, and thus we get a certain type of body according to superior order. This is called karma bandha. To get out of this karma bandha, one must engage himself in devotional service. Then one will not be affected by the modes of material nature. Mam chayo vyabhicharena bhakti yogena sevate sa gunan samatityaitan brahma bhuyaya kalpate. One who engages in the full devotional service, who does not fall down in any circumstance, at once transcends the modes of material nature and thus comes to the level of Brahman. Bhagavad Gita 14:26. To remain immune from the material qualities, one must engage himself in devotional service. Shravanam Kirtanam Vishnu. That is the perfection of life. When Maharaj Bharat took birth as a Brahman, he was not very interested in the duties of a Brahman, but within he remained a pure Vaishnava, always thinking of the lotus feet of the Lord. As advised in Bhagavad Gita, Man mana bhavamad bhakto myadaji mam namaskuru. This is the only process by which one can be saved from the danger of repeated birth and death. Okay, we're ending with this text here. Tasyapi hava atmajasya vipra putra sneha anubadamana asama avartanat sanskaran yata upadesham vididhana upanitasya chapuna socha atmana adin karmanan niyaman anabhipretan api samikshayat anushishtena hi bhavayam pitu putrena iti. The Brahman father's mind was always filled with affection for his son, Jaḍa Bharata Maharaj. Therefore, he was always attached to Jaḍa Bharata. Because Jaḍa Bharata was unfit to enter the Grihastha ashram, he simply executed the purificatory process up to the end of the Brahmacharya ashram. Although Jaḍa Bharata was unwilling to accept his father's instructions, the Brahman nonetheless instructed him in how to keep clean and how to wash, thinking that the son should be taught by the father. Purport. Jaḍa Bharata was Bharat Maharaj in the body of a Brahman, and he outwardly conducted himself as if he were dull, deaf, dumb, and blind. Actually, he was quite alert within. He knew perfectly well of the results of fruitive activity and the results of devotional service. In the body of a Brahman, Maharaj Bharat was completely absorbed in devotional service within. Therefore, it was not at all necessary for him to execute the regulative principles of fruitive activity. As confirmed in Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, Svanushtistasya dharmasya sangsiddhir haritoshanam. That's from Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam 1-13. One has to satisfy Hari, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That is the perfection of the regulative principles of fruitive activity. Besides that, it is stated in Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, Dharma svanushtita pungsam vishvaksena katasuya notpadayed yadiratim shrama eva hi kevalam. Duties, dharma, executed by men, regardless of occupation, are only so much useless labor if they do not provoke attraction for the message of the Supreme Lord. Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam 1-8. These karma kanda activities are required as long as one has not developed Krishna consciousness. If one is developed in Krishna consciousness, there is no need to execute the prior regulative principles of karma kanda. Srila Madhavendra Puri said, "O regulative principles of karma kanda, please excuse me. I cannot follow all these regulative principles, for I am fully engaged in devotional service." He expressed the desire to sit somewhere beneath a tree and continue chanting the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. Consequently, he did not execute all the regulative principles. Similarly, Haridas Thakur was born in a Mohammedan family. From the very beginning of his life, he was never trained in the Karmakanda system. But because he was always chanting the holy name of the Lord, Sri Krishna Chaitanya Mahaprabhu accepted him as Namacharya, the authority in chanting the holy name. As Jaḍa Bharata, Bharat Maharaj was always engaged in devotional service within his mind. Since he had executed the regulative principles continuously for 3 lives, he was not interested in continuing to execute them, although his Brahmin father wanted him to do so. Alright, so that's our reading for today. We're ending 12 minutes early today. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaur, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaur, Hari Bol. Jai Shri Guru Gauranga Gandhara Vikagiri Dhari, Shri Radha Vinod Vihari Ju ki Jai, Shri Govinda Gopinath Maran Mohan Ju ki Jai, Nitil Pravishtam Vishnupara Tashmad, Srila Bhaktivedanta Narayan Goswami Maharaj Srila Gurudev ki Jai, Nitil Pravishtam Vishnupara Tashmad, Srila Bhaktivedanta Vaman Goswami Maharaj ki Jai, Nitil Pravishtam Vishnupara Tashmad, Srila Bhakti Vedanta Swami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada ki Jai, Nitil Pravishta Mahabhagavat Srila Bhaksharas Babaji Maharaj ki Jai, Nitil Pravishta Srila Satchidananda Bhakti Vinod Thakur ki Jai, Nitil Pravishta Vaishnav Sarvabhaumashta Jagannath Das Babaji Maharaj ki Jai, Shri Rupano Gauriya Guru Varga ki Jai, Shri Rup Sanatan Bhatta Raghunath Shri Jeev Gopal Bhatta Raghunath Shadha Goswami Prabhu ki Jai, Shri Sarup Damodar Rai Ramanandari Shri Gopal Shadha Vrinda ki Jai, Namacharya Shri Haridas Thakur ki Jai, Prem se kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda, Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasari Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki Jai, Shri Kshetra Mandal, Kora Mandal, Vraja Mandal, Mathura Vrindavan Dham ki Jai, Sarva Abhishta Bharata Giriraj Maharaj ki Jai, Shri Radha Kund Shama Kund ki Jai, Shri Mana Devi Ganga Devi ki Jai, Shri Tulsi Maharani Vrinda Devi ki Jai, Shri Bhakti Devi ki Jai, Shri Purnamasi Agamai ki Jai, Shri Gopeshwar Mahadev ki Jai, Shri Harinam Sankirtan ki Jai, Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki Jai, Samagata Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki Jai, Shri Hera Panchami Titi ki Jai, Shri Lakshmi Vijayotsav ki Jai, Shri Nitai Gaur Premanande Hari Hari Om. Vrindai Tulsi Devai Priyai Keshavashaja Krishna Bhakti Padadevi Sattvatai Namo Namaha Vansha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Vyaivacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Dandavat Pranams. See you all tomorrow. Feels good stopping early today, actually. Okay.
Haribol.